the folks on you are welcome here. To all who are here this morning, welcome home. The prelude prepares us for worship. Wake up. Am I on? Can you hear me now? Very good. Let's wake up. Not just from the Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and to its pain. We must wake up to this reality that not all in our world have to have what we have, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied to in a great web of mutuality of which we are all part. We must stay woke, in the words of our friends and colleagues in Black Lives Matter, working every day for racial justice in this country. Let's wake up, let's stay awake, let's stay woke. And now, in this time and place, let us worship together. In the spirit of inclusivity and friendship, take a few minutes greeting those around you, especially people you might not recognize. For those of you online, greet each other in the chat. your body, your spirit for our opening hymn, 108.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? No? Yes? Okay, I'll get closer. So Helen has asked me to say a few words this morning about the state of biomedical research. So let me introduce myself. I'm Susan Bellis. I'm a professor at UAB Medical School, and my laboratory studies pancreatic cancer. So you've probably read about all of the attacks on science under the new administration. And those attacks have come in two forms. The first is in the form of funding cuts, and the second centers on ideological attacks. So rather than repeat what's been in the news, I thought I would give some concrete examples of how both types of attacks have impacted my area of research. But before I do, I thought I would explain what a grant is. So you probably all know a grant is a bolus of money that funds research in a laboratory, and those can be from the federal government or private foundations and sometimes industry as well. But what you may not know is that grants actually pay for everything in the lab, not the university. So grants pay all of my personnel costs, all of my supplies, and I have to cover 60% of my own salary on grants. So if you don't have grants, you don't have a lab. So how do you get a grant? So I'll use NIH as an example. So NIH grants are usually given in 5-year increments. So what you do is you write what's known as a proposal. And a proposal is a 5-year plan of all the experiments you're going to do and why they're important. So that gets submitted to NIH, and then NIH assembles a panel of expert scientists who review the grants. They assign a raw score based on merit, and then those raw scores are percentile. So the best score would get a 1%, for example. And then NIH funds as many as they can, starting from the best grants, and until their budget is expended. Okay, so my grants go to the National Cancer Institute. In January of 2025, the National Cancer Institute funded the top 9% of all proposals. So this is really competitive. You compete with scientists all over the country. So 4 months later, after Trump came into office, that number dropped to 3%, 2/3 drop. So you can imagine how difficult it is to get a proposal to land in that top 3 percentile. So in addition to it being more difficult to get a new grant, the Trump administration has canceled many, many grants, the existing grants already in place. And usually the reason that you get is that the topic of the grant doesn't fit Trump priorities. So it's not even a scientific reason. If that's not bad enough, the Trump administration has proposed even more cuts to the NIH, but those fortunately have been blocked by Congress. But nonetheless, it's a very difficult time to maintain a funded lab. So now I'm going to pivot and give an example of an ideological attack, and then I'll stop. And I'm going to use as my example messenger RNA vaccines, or mRNA for short. So this was the technology used in a couple of the COVID vaccines. Well, you probably are aware that the Trump administration has cast all kinds of aspersions on this technology, suggesting that mRNA vaccines are unsafe. They are perfectly safe. If you have concerns, please come talk to me. But because of the skepticism, the Trump administration has canceled more than $500 million in funding on mRNA vaccines, and they're trying to block all new funding for this technology. So why am I talking about these? Well, it turns out that mRNA vaccines have huge potential as a cancer treatment. And so because of this, in early 2022, a clinical trial was started using mRNA vaccines for pancreatic cancer. So before I tell you the results, does anybody know the 5-year survival rate for pancreatic cancer? Anybody want to take a guess? Very low. It's 13%. So it's one of the deadliest cancers. If you catch it early stage, it's about 25 to 30%. So in early 2022, a clinical trial was started, and they followed the patients for 3.5 years. At the 3.5-year mark, 75% of the patients were alive, and what's more exciting is 44% were completely cancer-free. And the results are even better if you look more closely. So some of the patients did not have a strong initial immune response to the vaccine. That's a problem that can be addressed with further research. If you look at just the patients who had a good initial immune response to the vaccine, which was about half, which is a lot, 75% of those patients were completely cancer-free 3.5 years later. So this is truly remarkable. I have never seen anything like this in my whole career. So as a cancer researcher and also as someone who lost a husband to cancer, this is really heartbreaking to me. So what can you do? I think you all know, write your congressman, protest, donate money if you can, and then finally, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning. I am Tom Jacobs, member of the board. Please read the bottom of your connection card before you turn it in. We have lots of volunteer opportunities this week. Our church is supported by those who call our church home and by those who support the efforts of our church to change the world for the better. If this is your first time with us, please pass the plate. We are just glad you are here. We share our cash plate every Sunday with organizations whose work reflects UU values to care for marginalized persons, advocate for real and systemic change, defend our environment, and promote peace and justice and equity for all. Today we are sharing our plate with the Alabama Coalition for Immigrant Justice, abbreviated ACIJ. They are a group of individuals and organizations working for the rights and dignity of all people by cultivating just policies, encouraging grassroots leadership and participation, building alliances, and amplifying the voices and contributions of immigrants in Alabama. We appreciate your donations, either by placing them in the plate, by mailing your donation to the church, or by using PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. More information is found in the order of service in the lower right corner. Thank you for your generous support of our church and our Share the Plate recipient. May we give in love and in hope.
out and tell our story, let it echo far and wide. Make them hear you, make them hear you. How justice was our battle and how justice was denied. Make them hear you, make them hear you.
Now is the time for a couple folks to come forward for the stewardship moment. Alice Moore and Ramsey Scott.
We are pledging because children and youth programs like OWL and Summer Camp are fun. We can spend time with our friends. We are pledging because children and youth programs like OWL and Summer Camp are fun. We can spend time with our friends and get to know new people and do fun activities.
So we ask that you turn in your pledge if you haven't already and consider the impact that it makes not just for the adults in our church community, but the youth as well.
Is there anyone else that's going to do a stewardship moment? Okay. Now's the time that we celebrate our joys and hold each other in our sorrows within our community. For those of you online, please share in our online chat and hold one another in love through your typed words. For those of you in person, I invite you to come forward today and drop a stone in what's on your heart. Today, we celebrate and we lift up Andy Duxbury. We lift him up. He had surgery on Thursday, but now he was home on Friday and he's here today, so yay. May we keep one another in our hearts and minds. And come forward if you want to light a stone. I hope you noticed everyone dropped a stone. They didn't light the stone, like I said. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation, followed by a moment of silence. Today's words are by Harry Meserve. From arrogance, pompousness, and thinking ourselves more important than we are, may some saving sense of humor liberate us. For allowing ourselves to ridicule the faith of others, may we be forgiven. For making war and calling it justice, indifference and calling it tolerance, pollution and calling it progress, may we be cured. For telling ourselves and others that evil is inevitable while good is impossible, may we stand corrected. Our insurgent lives are mixed up, tragic, aspiring, and doubting. We want to be as good in our hearts as we have always wanted to be. Let's take a moment of silence. So be it.
Good morning. This is set up funny. I would love to invite, JD, you can come up here. All my young at heart to come forward for a story. Hi, you come up here. Well, I'm gonna share a story and then you can share that with me when we get downstairs, okay? Okay. Oh, we'll show it to him in a little bit. I appreciate, what a good sharer. Excellent job. Shh. Ooh, I like that. We'll share that when I'm done with my story, okay? I'll hold it for you. Excellent, excellent. While y'all are gonna sit over there, they're like professionals today. Professional story listeners. I don't know what's happening. So, good morning, friends. I wanna start with a question today. Are y'all ready for a question? Have you ever seen what happens when someone falls down like outside on the playground? What happens? They cry. Sometimes they get hurt really bad. You hurt your knees? What do other people do? Grayson does not get hurt anytime, ever. So what do other people do if someone falls down? What do you think, Aria? What do other people do if someone falls down? You help pick them up? Yeah. What do you think, Ollie? What do you do? Oh, someone's gonna come help. Oh, you can go get them and bring them to adult? I feel very safe on the playground right now, you guys. Well, let's see what happens next in our story and then we'll talk some more about it, okay? So sometimes, like you said, people come to help, right? Like if you see someone fall, you go to see if they're okay, and they say, are you okay? And a friend might help them stand up, like you guys said, and you might take them to a grown-up, and sometimes you may just feel sad because someone's hurt, right? And you feel sad, yeah. And so even if you didn't fall, you probably noticed them fall, and you still might feel sad, even though it wasn't even you that fell down. Then that's because we're all connected to each other. Interesting. So let's tell a little story about this. Imagine a big, beautiful garden, okay? Big garden outside, lots of flowers. And in this garden, there are flowers of every color. Yellow, red, purple, blue, and there are tall flowers and tiny flowers. And then there's also like vegetables and herbs and big leafy and trees, just beautiful, right? And then in the middle of the garden is a watering can that helps the plants grow, right? Excellent. But one day, the gardener decides that they're only gonna water the tall plants. Only the tall plants. Where's our gardeners in the room? Is this a good idea? No, you can't do that. So the gardener says, I'm only gonna water the tall plants, and the tall plants get water every single day, but the little flowers don't get any water. And at first, it doesn't really seem like a big deal. The tall flowers are growing just fine, But then the garden starts to change. The smaller flowers start to droop because they're not getting any water. Some of the leaves on the plants turn brown because they're not getting any water. Bees stop visiting so much because there's not as many flowers. The butterflies fly away, and even the tall flowers start to be able to tell there's a difference because the garden isn't the healthiest when all plants can't grow well. You gotta water the big plant and the little plant, exactly. If some plants aren't treated fairly, the whole garden suffers. So our world is just like that garden. When someone is treated unfairly, it doesn't just affect that one person, it affects the whole community. So our world is just like that. And here at our church, we learn about the importance of things like justice and equity, and keeping love at the center of everything that we do. Right? Exactly. So when one person gets left out, the whole community feels smaller, right? If not everyone has an equitable experience, we all feel bad. If someone is hurt, the community hurts. But here's the good news. Just like people in the garden can choose to water all of the plants, we can choose to build a world that's more fair. We can help our community be stronger and kinder and more beautiful, just like a well-cared-for garden. In our community here at UUCB, we try to remember that every person matters, right? And every voice matters, right? And every story matters, right? Yes! Everyone matters. So because when we take care of one another, the whole garden, our whole world can flourish. And our friend JD drew a picture today, and it's really appropriate because it says Earth is sick, and we have got to help. How did you know I was going to talk about that today, JD? Just knew because your parents told you. So that's a very appropriate picture. Thank you. And the doctor is helping Earth get better, just like we can all do. So, and because we can take care of one another, the whole garden, our whole world can flourish. And that is how we live our values of love and justice together. That's how we do it. Exactly. And on that, grown-ups, could you sing us downstairs for some community time?
Aren't our kids great? That little boy that was going, yeah, I need to meet him afterwards. Okay, Monty Thorburn is our guest speaker today, and Monty was born in Fresno, California, in the San Joaquin Valley. His memories of growing up were of his dad and his uncles being in and out of the U.S. Air Force, with his dad and mother wanting a simple, stable, American middle-class life. And with the mystery of his grandparents' roots. The family's dreams centered on hard work and dad and mom's dream of operating as a small lumber yard. World War II, the Korean conflict, and later the Vietnam War interrupted his family's efforts and put him in confusing religious upbringing that only recently, at the age of 82, makes sense. When Monty reached adulthood, he became a teacher. He taught mostly disadvantaged and alternative school children, children with confused identities, and he could identify with them. Note, identity versus role confusion. Today's lecture sermon will attempt to explain why accurate history and stories of survival and accomplishments are vital for students to succeed. A defining moment for Monty was at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, April 4th, 1969, when Dr. Martin Luther King was first honored by those he'd served in the Black Belt of Alabama. The trauma of that day and what he witnessed thereafter have sustained his passion for critical research. CRT's the context of moral leadership studies. Monty is our board president in Tuscaloosa congregation. And before I say welcome, everybody should have a handout of 4 newspapers. If you don't, raise your hand and I'll try to start getting them passed out. And Julie's going to help me. Welcome, Monty Thornburg.
Good morning. I don't believe this is working properly, so for right now, I'll speak here in this mic. I was told by a friend to be sure and speak into the mic. I don't know where the people are in Tuscaloosa. Can you all hear me okay? Good. Yes, I've changed the program that I'm going to do with you about 4 different times since I sent that little blurb that was just read out loud about my own biography, I guess I would say. My own. Okay. Thank you. And so what's happened? I attended a program. I worked with a professor, African-American professor named Robert O. White. He's at Alabama State University. I do research. He took an interest in the research that I'm doing. Tuscaloosa County, Moringa. And so I changed my program for a reason, something that happened on Friday. And what happened on Friday was as I was giving my little talk about, and I could talk to you about the diaspora in America, about immigrants, for 2 hours. But I was told that I would be given a book somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. So I changed my program because I met a woman who I had met a year ago. And our church and the Tuscaloosa Church are partners. The first thing I want to do is I would like to take a Okay. The first thing I would like to do is take a little survey. So everybody here and I would like for those of you in Tuscaloosa to do the same. I have a colleague who's facilitating in Tuscaloosa. Our church operates the same way as yours does. We have a president, which I am at the present moment, and then we have a president-elect. And so the president-elect of our church, Dr. Crystal Veronia, she's also an English professor at UA, and so she kind of helped me a little bit with some ideas of what we're going to be doing today. So this is going to be an interactive program that you get to participate. Okay, let's do the survey. How many of you raise your hand? I'm going to need to look over here at the choir. I wish we had a great choir like yours. Congratulations. It's beautiful. How many of you do not have people, family people, friends, who are spread out around the country? How many don't have anyone? In other words, everybody you know is pretty much right here where you grew up or where you live, and you don't have other people in other states or other counties and other countries even. Everybody raise your hand, please. So very few hands. So all of us, that's my survey. I'm assuming the same survey's been done in Tuscaloosa. All of us are part of a diaspora. Every one of us. We're all immigrants of some sort. And unfortunately for Native American people, because of a lot of incidents that happened, they're part of a diaspora as well. And unfortunately for African American people, they're part of a diaspora as well. So today is Bloody Sunday in Selma. So that's why I was there on the 6th, because the event, the Jubilee, goes on for 4 or 5 days, 4 days. And there are a number of events. And so I was invited by Dr. White to come and speak. And what happened is I met a lady that I had seen a year prior with our partnership with this church and our partnership with our church in Tuscaloosa. And it was the most successful, I would say, partnership event that we've done so far. And that event, and I don't know if there's anyone in this room, but that event was that a number of parishioners from here and a number from our church in Tuscaloosa all met at the courthouse in Utah, Alabama, in Greene County. That's Utah spelled E-U-T-A-W. It's an Indian name from South Carolina, another part of the diaspora. It was a really successful event. People really enjoyed it. Each year there's a festival called a Roots Festival, and a number of people from here and a number of people from our church in Tuscaloosa went. And in that Roots Festival, the first day of the festival is blues and jazz, mostly blues, and blues of the type that you find in the Black Belt of Alabama. And then the second day is gospel. And Jane Sapp, try to remember that name, Jane Sapp, particularly if you're interested in music, because Jane Sapp is a musicologist, an ethnomusicologist. And she came to Utah, Alabama from here. We had, for a long period of time, we had a extension program in Utah that was with Miles College. And there was a professor that came to Miles College from Harvard. He had actually been the dean of Harvard College before he came to Miles College. His name was John U. Monroe. And John U. Monroe became disenchanted with what was going on at Harvard at the time in the early 60s. So in 1964, he came here to work at Miles and teach at Miles College. Like I say, he was the dean, had been dean for, I think, something like 15 years. He didn't have to leave Harvard to come to Miles College, but he did. He also should be known as one of the greatest heroes, military heroes in American history, but he's unknown because a lot of those combat veterans from World War II never talked about their experiences. But John Monroe, if any of you are a sailor, you might know about the 2E or the USS Enterprise. The USS Enterprise is the most famous ship in the U.S. Navy during World War II. And John U. Monroe prevented that ship after it was hit by a kamikaze from sinking. He was the damage control officer of the ship before he went to Harvard and became the dean, and before he left Harvard and came to Miles College. And then from Miles College, he contacted an African-American student that had been admitted to Harvard at the time he was still there. and he was Jane Sapp's husband. So we got two great persons to come, and so they came specifically to take over the extension program. It was a Miles College extension program in Utah. And it was mostly for returning Vietnam War veterans. The program started in 1964, I believe. And the festival that I'm talking about started in 1975. And last August was the 50-year anniversary of that festival. Can you imagine? Now, Jane Sapp didn't stay the whole time, but she's just a great educator, musicologist. So if you ever look her name up in Google, you'll see her working with young children in Atlanta and other places, playing the piano, teaching them about their heritage, using music. And so the person that took over for Jane had worked with Jane because she was the assistant director of the Miles College program in Utah, and her name was Carol, middle name Prejean. She's from Louisiana, and her last name is Zippert. And so those 4 newspapers that I have shared with you that I'm going to be reading poems from come from that newspaper because Carol Prejean is a poet. And a lot of her poetry could really be music as well. So music and poetry are great ways of teaching youngsters. Like I say, I've been a teacher all my life, really. I started my career here in Alabama at what's now called the University of West Alabama. At the time, it was called Livingston University. So anyway, I met a man who landed on Normandy Beach, Omaha Beach, on D-Day after struggling, African-American. He was the only African-American professor at Livingston at the time. And he hadn't even wanted to go there. That's another long story. But he was forced to go there. And he was my mentor and somebody I'd stayed in touch with all these years. So when Hurricane Katrina came, I flew here to Birmingham where I have a good friend, and I had been forced to go to New Orleans at one time because of, I'll just tell you, the KKK. In 1968, 69. And so anyway, so I came here during Hurricane Katrina 2005 and called Robert. And as I'm driving to Mississippi to find my son, I hooked up with Robert, and he started telling me his World War II story, which I'd never heard. I didn't even know he had been in World War II. Landed on Normandy Beach, Omaha Beach, on D-Day. But it goes deeper than that. Robert had actually been transferred to what's called the 761st Black Panther Tank Battalion with General Patton and had fought through the Battle of the Bulge. And then after that, his battalion went across the Rhine and defeated Hitler and liberated a Jewish concentration camp, which was the most heartbreaking experience that Robert experienced. I've videotaped stories with him, and I have videotape of him actually in tears after all of that. So anyway, I met Jane Sapp Friday. And I've known Carol and John Zippert, who are the editors of this newspaper that was taken over by African-American people in the early 1980s because they were being misrepresented, the history. We all know about misrepresenting history or erasing history, correct? So that's part of it. And unfortunately, or it's part of life, John and Carol are my age. We're all in our 80s. And John and Carol are going to have to retire, and they're going to move back to Louisiana. So we're trying to save that newspaper, and we're doing it. So the first newspaper that I'm going to read a poem from is included in that paper. If you look at the cover, has a person named Maya, who was the who wrote the article on Martin Luther King. And she's actually our religious education instructor at our UU church in Tuscaloosa. She's wonderful. And she's now going to become the editor of the paper. So we're moving forward. So the reason that I'm giving you a lot of background. So the reason I want to do these newspaper poems is because these poems were all written by Carol. And I want to honor Carol Prejean Zippert by reading her poems. And I want you to remember that these poems could be songs. We just need somebody with a little music talent to think about it. A lot of these poems could be songs. So I'm going to get the newspapers. So the first paper, if you have it, is January 21st, celebrating Dr. King by calling Greene County's community to serve with love. To serve with love. And that's part of our mission as well, to serve with love. So anyway, Maya Quinn actually wrote this article. And the first poem that I'm going to read is the poem that Carol printed in this paper, if you have it. And the name of the poem is, We'll See What the Day Brings. We'll see what the day brings. Our dad had a few wise sayings, including a regular response to a morning greeting. How you doing today? We'll see what the day brings, was his mantra. I still wonder if this saying guided him to anticipate, to accept what the day brings. I imagine he acknowledged that the day was given to him, one day at a time, and each day was unlike another. We'll see what the day brings. Our dad's day was always filled with work of some sort. He oftentimes concluded a day sitting in the backyard observing his garden and perhaps revisiting what that day had brought. Our dad had a few wise sayings, and his words, we'll see what the day brings, still touches me as a humble prayer. Carol Prejean Zippert. So that's the first poem. I want you to think about these poems as we go through this. The first poem is very personal for Carol. You may have personal stories of your own, from your own parents or other important people in your life, something you remember as a child, just a simple statement. One that comes to me in my diaspora was from my grandfather, and he would always say, here it comes. Here it comes. See, my grandfather, the one I'm thinking of, Norman, he loved trains. And I don't know if you're aware, but the diaspora of America really moved about on trains until very late in our history. And those trains, actually, most of them originated in New Orleans, where I happened to move to it after Alabama. There's one train that goes west. So if you live in West Louisiana or Texas, and your family moved or had to move for a reason, they probably went to California or maybe the territory of Arizona or New Mexico, but probably California. If you lived up the Mississippi River in Mississippi or North Arkansas, then you probably took the Illinois Central, which there's a famous song called The Train They Call the City of New Orleans. And if you lived going a different direction toward Alabama and Birmingham and Atlanta and beyond all the way to New York, the midnight train to Georgia, that's a song, then your family probably migrated to Philadelphia or New York or Baltimore or Washington, D.C. So that's how the migration patterns happened in America initially, and that was my grandmother's journey from Illinois. She was a nurse to Mississippi, took care of a plantation owner type person on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi near where Jefferson Davis' home was. Then she went from there to the Arizona Territory and from there to California to San Diego, where she met my grandfather. Grandfather I always knew, Norman, who had fought in the Spanish-American War, actually, and he was also a U.S. Marshal. He's buried in a national cemetery. And he took care of my uncles who all got involved in World War II, and my dad. So that's part of my diaspora. I'm going to read another poem, the second one. Now, this particular newspaper is, I think I have it correct. Let me make sure I have the right one, what I want to do. No. Second one is January 28th. January 28th. Now, this poem is long. It's the only long poem in the group. But it's very important because it deals with conflict. And the kind of conflict that I used to work in peace education and conflict resolution. And a lot of times conflict comes about because other people, and we see this happening right now, even at the national level. A lot of people try to tell your story, not you. You don't get to tell your own story. That infuriates people. So here's Carol's poem. Who can tell my story? So here you come and you're saying you can tell my story. So how will you start? I don't even know the beginning exactly. It goes back so far and so deep. So when you tell my story, how will you tell about all the pain that you refuse to know about and all the pain that I truly know about? And when you tell my story, where will you go to meet all my struggles? Do you know how I lift myself to greet a sunrise each morning? Do you know how I prepare my courage and my faith to last through that coming sunset in the evening. That's how my story goes. So you would tell my story. Where will you find what I know to celebrate? What do you have inside you that will connect to the history that leads me on my journey? Deep in my body, spirit, and find that dance and song and poem that make my story. So you think you can tell my story, and you still don't hear your lie in that. You can tell my story? My story is mine, and you can know it when I tell it. My story is mine, and you can know it when you break down the lies in your story that you inflict on mine. My story is mine, and when you hear it from me, you will know that it does connect to yours. And we can have our story when the past and the present are lifted to the truth. When the story is ours, we will know justice and we will know peace. And that's how the story goes. So this second poem by Carol is really both interpersonal, but it's intrapersonal. In other words, it's personal between people as well. The first one is really just herself. So I worked in New Orleans for, 15 years on conflict resolution, what became known, we called it peace education. And then unfortunately it became known as violence prevention. That was a misnomer. Once they named it violence prevention, then it became like, okay, who's violent? Who are we saying is violent here, right? And so as I worked through that in my dissertation, honestly, at the University of New Orleans, I came to realize that a lot of what was going on with a lot of money that was being sent to school districts and so forth were really targeting kids and created what we now know. It wasn't called this at the time I did my dissertation, but it became known as the school to jail pipeline. That's what it became. So I worked in that process as an administrator after I got my doctorate for a while, well, for several years in California. And we still have this division in America between those who want to blame and tell other people's stories for them. I'm going to move on. The next poem is in this article that's in the February 18th. And it has a photograph of Jesse Jackson. This particular edition was written when Jesse Jackson passed away. And if you watch the news, you probably know that his funeral was just, I think, a day ago or a couple days ago. And so this is a very short poem. And it's really about history. And I would say it's about history in the sense that what we're dealing with in America right now is the erasure of history. And on a personal level, one of the reasons I'm here, have come back to this part of Alabama from California where I grew up, was to chronicle true history. I've told you a little bit about it from Robert Brown, and there's a number of other people. So I'll read the poem and then I'll share something else with you. Once upon a time, this is Carol's poem. Once Upon a Time is the title of this poem. History is once upon a time, when all that happened and all that makes us who we are and where we are, the diaspora. History is once upon a time we look back upon and learn, and we move, stepping in footprints, still making our own. History is once upon a time struggles we have known. Give strength to those upon us now and those yet to come. History is once upon a time, no name is our own, and we pray to answer only to how we can call ourselves. History is once upon a time, as we live through stories, building on legacies for those who will need our history once upon a time. So we have a responsibility to tell truthful history as best we can. I'll share a couple little quick artifacts with you. I thought I was staying within the boundary of time. Sorry about that. Okay, the last one is about Selma, and I'll just go real quickly with that. And so it's called The Crossing, and because today is Bloody Sunday, some of our parishioners have gone there. The Crossing. We come to the bridge each year. We call it communication, honoring the first to pain, the first to die in the earlier crossing. The earlier crossing called Middle Passage, the earlier crossing called Underground Railroad, the earlier crossing called Jim Crow era, the earlier crossing called Flight from the South, the earlier crossing called Civil Rights Movement, the earlier crossing called Bloody Sunday. We call to the bridge each year, we call it Jubilee, celebrating all, still risking and sharing, continuing in the crossing. We come to the bridge each year, repairing bridges, damage we neglect and misuse, building bridges, bonding, more communities and cultures, crossing bridges in commemoration of jubilation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monty. And please rise and body your spirit as we sing our closing hymn 1012. It's in your teal-colored hymnal. And if you'd like to join the church, please come forward during the closing hymn. And the book's over here. We have such a good choir. Please check your order of service and your connection card for the upcoming events. For all the following, please sign up the connection card. Today, the Justice Committee is participating in the bridge crossing at Selma. This Tuesday, March 10th at 6 p.m., please visit the Islamic Society together, and at 6 p.m. to break their fast, and there's a QR code in your connection card. Reverend Julie is looking for folks to help plan logistics and also share stories at the Overdose and Addiction Recovery Symposium in May 16th and 17th. If you or a loved one have a story to share, please contact her, and please say the date, May 16th and 17th. Our church auction is live today. Please log in and bid. The auction will be open all month, and on April 5th, there's a celebration and a gathering to pick up your items. Please return your connection card. Now we have a following announcement on stewardship.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm a member of the Stewardship Committee, and I have a couple things that I want to share. As you all know, we're in our third week of the Stewardship Drive. I want to remind you of something Ruth said at our stewardship dinner a couple Saturdays ago. What she said is, when you're making a pledge, you're not making a pledge to the church, you're not making a pledge to the board, you're not making a pledge to Reverend Julie, we're making a pledge to each other. So as you think about your pledge, I'd encourage you to think about it that way. This is a pledge that we're making to each other. If you haven't pledged, out in the narthex today, there'll be envelopes with your name on it. If there's not an envelope with your name on it, there'll be a blank form. In the order of service, there's a QR code you can scan that will also allow you to make your pledge online. We have one more week before pledges are expected. The pledge period ends next Sunday. Lastly, at 11:30 following the service down in the Volker room, there will be a town hall regarding stewardship. If you have any questions about the process, if you have any questions about the budget that the Finance Committee and the board have developed, they'll be available to answer those questions so you can learn more. Thank you, and please pledge.
The online pledging using the QR code's very simple. In honoring the legacy of our ancestors, let's carry the flame forward as we extinguish the chalice. We shall overcome. When we truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people, we shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome. Let us say together, amen.
For the postlude, Sherry and Phil will be playing Lift Every Voice and Sing. This hymn has, for over 100 years, been known as the Negro National Anthem, and then now the Black National Anthem. The tradition when listening to it is the same as the tradition we follow when we listen to the Star-Spangled Banner or other countries' national anthem. If we are able, we stand as a sign of respect. So while Sherry and Phil play this beautiful anthem, I will be standing, and I invite those of you who are able to do so as well.